You never expect betrayal to wear a white dress and a perfect smile. But mine did. It was supposed to be a celebration, my sister's wedding. The kind of day where families come together, where differences are set aside, and everyone clinks glasses under fairy lights. At least that's what I told myself when I zipped up my daughter's dress and tied the satin sash into a neat bow. Look at me, Mom. Sophie twirled in front of the mirror, the soft pink of her flower girl gown catching the morning sun. She looked like magic, the kind you want to protect from the world. Her eyes sparkled with excitement and her curls bounced with every spin. I smiled at her reflection, though my chest tightened. There was always this tension, this thread pulled too tight every time we saw my family. Because no matter how much I loved Sophie, and I loved her with every cell in my body, my family never truly saw her. Not really. Sophie is Korean. I adopted her 5 years ago after a long, winding process that began the moment I walked into that orphanage. She had been just 3 then, quiet, holding a stuffed giraffe with one eye missing. I remember thinking she looked like she was trying to disappear, and still, something in her pulled me in like gravity. I didn't choose her, she chose me. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 35, and I've raised my daughter alone since the day she came home. She calls me Mom. I call her my heart. But to my family, especially my sister Emily, she was always the adopted kid, like a label printed on her forehead. We had never been close, Emily and I. Growing up, she was the golden one. Ballet recitals, straight A's, Daddy's favorite. I was the darker-haired girl with the curious eyes and the quiet voice that no one knew what to do with. Our mother once told me, "You're a bit of a mystery, Rachel." I think she meant it as a compliment, maybe. When Emily got engaged to Michael Langston, son of a powerful real estate developer in Chicago, the whole thing felt like a royal affair. Designer dress fittings, high-profile guest lists, pre-wedding coverage, and a lifestyle blog. I was shocked when the invitation arrived. Handwritten, gilded edges. I stared at it for a full minute before I noticed the small note attached. Hope Sophie can be our flower girl. Mom insists. That Mom insists told me everything. Still, I said yes, because Sophie was overjoyed. She practiced tossing imaginary petals down the hallway for weeks. She even picked out the ballet flats herself, silver with tiny rhinestones. I kept telling myself it would be fine, that maybe, just maybe, they'd see what I saw in her. The night before the wedding, at the rehearsal in a pristine downtown chapel, the shift started. Quiet at first. I caught the bridesmaids whispering, their gazes darting towards Sophie. One of them wrinkled her nose like she'd smelled something sour. Sophie didn't notice. She was busy counting steps, serious and focused. I approached Emily during a pause. "Is something wrong?" I asked gently. She didn't meet my eyes. "Michael's family has concerns," she said, adjusting a bracelet that looked absurdly expensive. "They think, well, it's about the pictures." I waited. "An Asian child in the family photos will confuse people," she added flatly. My mouth went dry. Confuse people? Sophie wasn't a misplaced accessory. She was family. My daughter. I felt the cold settle in. "Emily," I said slowly, "she's part of this family. She's your niece." She finally looked at me, and her expression chilled me. "You were always different," she said. "You don't look like us. You don't act like us. Mom and Dad never knew what to do with you. Sophie just makes it obvious." Her words gutted me. I had spent my whole life trying not to see it. How I stood out in every family photo, with my olive skin and wavy black hair, next to a sea of blondes and redheads. I used to believe it was genetics. Now her words made it feel like something deeper, something intentional. "Just keep her in the background tomorrow, please." That night I lay awake in the hotel bed, Sophie sleeping beside me, her hand wrapped around mine. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breath, thinking of every time I had told her she belonged. The next morning she was up with the sun. I braided her hair with tiny flowers, painted her nails pink, and watched her walk toward the church like a dream I never thought I deserved. She was radiant. But dreams don't survive cruelty. It happened during the pre-ceremony photos. The guests were laughing, glasses clinking, cameras flashing. And then, from across the room, I heard the voice that cracked it all apart. "She can't be in the family photos. She's not one of us." I froze. The voice belonged to Michael's mother, a woman with a smile so polished it could cut glass. She stood near the photographer, arms crossed, eyes fixed on Sophie like she was a smudge on a white tablecloth. Sophie's hand tightened around the petal basket. She turned to me, her lower lip trembling. "But I'm the flower girl." I knelt down beside her, heart pounding, trying to shield her from the stares that suddenly filled the room. Before I could respond, Emily stepped forward. Her face was calm, too calm. Mom's right, she said, voice like steel. You're not part of this family, neither of you are. It didn't feel real. Not until I saw my parents standing silently behind her. Not until I saw my mother lower her eyes, and my father, the man who raised me, look away. The truth had been simmering for years. I just never imagined it would boil over here. Say it, Emily said, turning toward them. Tell her. She deserves to know. I stood slowly, Sophie's hand still in mine. Tell me what? My mother's lips parted, but no sound came. Her shoulders shook and her eyes filled with tears. My father looked like he was about to be sick. Then another voice spoke, deep, firm, unfamiliar. She's right. You were never truly one of them. Every head turned. At the entrance of the church stood a tall man in a dark suit, silver hair slicked back, a presence that silenced the entire room. He looked at me the way someone stares at a memory they thought they'd lost. His eyes, warm and piercing, were the same shape as mine. Emily stepped forward, her tone sharp. Who are you? The man walked slowly into the church, the sound of his footsteps echoing. My name is Charles Davenport, he said, and Rachel is my daughter. Gasps, whispers. A few phones went up, like people were witnessing a scene from a movie. My knees nearly gave out. I clutched Sophie tighter. That's not possible, I muttered. My father, or the man I thought was my father, looked away in shame. My mother broke down completely. Charles nodded toward them. They lied to you. For 35 years. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. DNA test results, legal documents, everything you were never supposed to see. Sophie looked up at me, her eyes wide. Mom, is he telling the truth? I couldn't speak. I was staring at a stranger who felt more familiar than the people I'd known my entire life. Then my mother found her voice, ragged, desperate. You have no right to be here, she screamed. We had a deal, Charles's expression turned cold. The deal was that I would stay away until Rachel turned 35. Her birthday was last week. My thoughts spun in all directions. What deal? Why 35? How long had they been keeping this secret from me? Emily tried to seize control again. You've made your point. Now leave. This is my wedding day. But Charles didn't move. He turned to her, his voice low but cutting. Ms. Walker, I own the development firm your fiancé works for. If you'd like to keep this day from becoming a full-blown scandal, I suggest you stop talking. Her mouth dropped open. Michael's parents exchanged panicked glances. Charles turned back to me. His tone softened. I know this is a lot, but your mother, your real mother, wanted you to know who you are. I shook my head. I don't know what to believe. He stepped forward again, pulling a worn photograph from his wallet. Please, just look. I took it with shaking hands. In it was a woman, beautiful, smiling, with warm brown skin and thick dark hair. She held a baby in her arms. Me. Her name was Helena, Charles said quietly. She died giving birth to you. I wasn't ready to raise a child alone, so I trusted someone I shouldn't have. Your nanny, the woman who became your mother. She offered to care for you. I signed away my rights while drowning in grief. My hands trembled. She told me I was their miracle child, that they had trouble conceiving. Charles closed his eyes. They already had Emily, but she wanted a sibling. Your adoptive mother said raising 2 daughters would complete her family. So they took you and erased every trace of the woman who gave you life. The world tilted beneath me. Everything I believed about who I was, about the people I loved, cracked wide open. I looked at Sophie, and she looked back with the same mixture of confusion and pain. And then she said something that broke me in half. He looks like us, Mom. Sophie's words echoed through me like a truth I had been waiting my whole life to hear. He looks like us, Mom. And he did. Charles had the same eyes as me, the same cheekbones, the same shade of skin that never quite matched anyone else in the family I grew up with. It was all there. All the answers I never knew I was missing. I looked past the guests, the whispers, the eyes filled with judgment and confusion, and turned to the only people who had ever truly made me feel small. To my parents, no, to the couple who raised me in shadows. To Emily, whose cruelty had finally revealed the cracks in her golden facade. I straightened my back. I'm done, I said simply, and I walked away. Sophie's hand was in mine. Charles followed us out into the bright spring air, and the heavy door of the chapel closed behind us. It was like stepping out of someone else's story, though, and finally returning to my own. We didn't speak for a long time. He took us to a quiet cafe tucked between 2 brownstones, a place with old books on the walls and the smell of fresh bread in the air. Sophie sat across from him, sipping hot chocolate like she was meeting a celebrity. So, does this mean you're my grandpa? She asked. He smiled, warm, almost shy. If your mother agrees, I'd be honored. I stared at the steam rising from my coffee. Everything inside me was tangled: anger, relief, sadness, curiosity. But beneath it all, a strange and surprising calm. Tell me everything, I said. From the beginning. Charles opened a leather folder and pulled out a photo album. Helena, he said, was an architect. We met when her firm was hired to design the headquarters of my company. She was brilliant, fierce, and funny in the quietest ways. Page after page, photos of Helena in cafes sketching buildings on napkins, laughing in front of ruins in Rome, smiling with Charles at a lakeside picnic. When she found out she was pregnant with you, she cried. She said she never thought she'd have time to be a mother, but with you, she wanted everything. He paused at a hospital photo. Helena, pale but glowing, holding a newborn. Me. There were complications. The doctors could only save one of you, and she chose you. My throat closed. I had imagined my birth mother so many times. I never thought the truth would come wrapped in such pain and such love. I fell apart after she died, Charles said. I drank. I disappeared into grief. And that's when Margaret, your nanny, stepped in. She said you needed a mother, a real family. I wasn't fit. She convinced me to sign custody papers and step away. I clenched my fists. And then she erased Helena. He nodded, shame thick in his voice. I regret it every single day. I looked at Sophie, sitting so still, absorbing every word. Why now? I asked. Why come back? The agreement said I couldn't contact you until your 35th birthday. I waited. And while I waited, I watched. I was there at your graduation, at your bookstore's opening. I hired people to make sure you were safe. And yes, I was the one who fast-tracked your loan. My head fell into my hands. It was overwhelming. Too much, too fast. And yet, it explained everything. And then he pulled out one last envelope. This, he said, is from Helena. She wrote it before you were born, just in case. She didn't make it. I opened it with trembling hands. The handwriting was delicate, the ink slightly faded. My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't stay. I'm sorry, my love. I wanted to hold you through every birthday, every heartbreak, every moment you'd become more you. But please, never doubt this. You were my greatest joy. From the moment I knew you existed, you changed me. Your father loves you, even if he didn't always know how to show it. Love can be messy like that. It doesn't always speak in the right language, but it's real. As my final gift, I've left you the house I designed. Your birthplace. A place where I imagined you growing up. Fill it with life. Fill it with love. Know you were always, always enough. Forever yours, Mom. Inside the envelope was a brass key, old, cool in my hand, and a deed. The house has been waiting, Charles said softly, just like me. We moved in a week later. It was small, sun-filled, and wrapped in Helena's fingerprints. Arched windows, carved banisters, soft corners that caught the light just right. The kind of house that had been loved before it had ever been lived in. Sophie flourished. She called Charles Grandpa within a week. He picked her up from piano lessons, helped with her science projects, and brought home a full-sized keyboard one day with the excuse that a true musician needs the right tools. As for me, I was learning how to be a daughter again. We met for coffee, for walks, for long dinners where I asked about Helena, and he answered every question like he was giving me back pieces of myself. And for the first time in my life, I felt rooted, not tolerated, not halfway accepted, but seen. Chosen, my former family tried to call. Emily even showed up at my store once, demanding an apology. I didn't even look up from my stack of books. I didn't owe them anything. They taught me that blood doesn't always equal love. But Sophie, she reminded me that love is something you build piece by piece, moment by moment. And Charles, he taught me that even the deepest mistakes can still be followed by healing. Sometimes the family you make, the family that finds you, is the only one that truly matters. And in this new life, this real life, I finally know who I am. I am Rachel Morgan. I am my mother's daughter. I am my daughter's mother, and I am home.